Success. Yes. Yes. She's back. She is back. She's back. She's back. Hey, it's Bill from Restore Christine. I'm at the warehouse right now with the 71 Cutlass. I've got a recurring problem that I'm going to try to fix. If you've got a classic car with points ignition, I'm hopeful that I've got the solution for you, because I've got a problem I'm going to show you. I'm going to pull this distributor out. I'm going to replace it with a points replacement kit, and we're going to see if that fixes our problem. But let me show you what it's doing. I can't even get it to start. What's happening is condensation is getting in between the points and it's fouling them. I've replaced them. I replace them every year, and I'm tired of doing it. I've got an MSD box underneath the dash. It's actually a Street Fire ignition box, a CD box. I use the old AC Delco distributor with points in it as a trigger only, but even that trigger is not enough right now to fire up this that CD box to get it to fire. So what I'm going to have to do now is I'm going to pull the distributor out, replace it with this points kit that I got, and put it back in, and hopefully it's going to fix our problem. So let's get started. All right, so even though this is a 71 Olds Cutlass, this is a 1972 Oldsmobile Rocket 350. I had this motor completely machined, punched 30 over, put some flat top pistons in it. Hardened valve seats on the exhaust, had the entire rotating assembly balanced, and I wanted to try to keep a factory look for this car when I restored it. So I just cleaned up underneath the hood as far as the organization and everything, but I kept the original Quadrajet carburetor, but I just like keeping it as original as possible. So what I've got to do now is, this Oldsmobile is a counter rotation. It rotates opposite of Chevrolet, so it's still 1843657 and on the firing order, my number one plug is still right here. But since I wasn't able to set the distributor to find where the cap is, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to pull these plug wires off, set them on the side, pull the cap off, find where the rotor is, mark where that rotor is pointed, and then pull this distributor out and remember to put it back like I had it. So let me get some wrenches and we'll go ahead and start pulling it out. All right, so I took a couple of pieces of masking tape and I put a masking tape on my rotor and a piece of masking tape on the body, and I just marked with a Sharpie so I can see which direction to align those two when it goes back in. So now let me go ahead and, I've already removed the retaining bolt on the bottom and the clip. I just need to look to see what wires I need to disconnect on this distributor, and then I'll be able to pull it completely out. All right, so as I'm pulling it out, what I've done is I've noticed which direction my vacuum canister's pointed. I took a picture of it, and I'm also watching this rotor to see how far it corkscrews into place and where does it start. You know, so when it comes disengaged from the cam gear on the bottom, I'm seeing it's pointed almost dead left to the driver's side. So that's what I'm going to remember when I stick it in. That's the way it's got to be pointed when I put the distributor back in. So I'm holding it now, and what I'm talking about is that when it came up, it rotated about that much. When I picked it up, this rotated and then it came free, and that was because of the cam gear on the bottom. So now I've got this with my marks. Let's get it to the bench and let's go ahead and put that Pertronix kit in. All right, so this is a 1972 AC Delco distributor. It's factory original with the exception of I have not put back the condenser. You don't need it with the CD ignition. It still has the vacuum pot, except this is a replacement vacuum pot. It's adjustable. You can put an Allen screw in here and adjust the advance with vacuum. So all that's dialed in. But one thing of note with these distributors is that end play. tends to be an issue. Any old distributor, you're going to end up with a distributor that's got some wear and tear on it, and then you'll notice that this will have a lot of end play. There's a packing shim kit that you can put in that comes from, I believe, Moroso, and it'll dial this in. But I've already adjusted this when I rebuilt this. When I rebuilt the motor, I already dialed in my end play, so I know that I have some shims in here that's tightened all of this up. But if you ever had a car that when you're trying to put a timing light on it, and the timing light wavers, particularly an old car, the timing light wavers back and forth and the needle bounces around, that is usually because of end play. And what's happening is this is jumping around because it's got too much movement. So let's get into what's in this box. So this is the Pertronix electronic ignition set, and this is part number 1181. It is universal for all GM AC Delco distributors. And let's see what's in the box. So of course we have instructions. There is a magnetic pickup ring. There is a pack of shims. In fact, I was just telling you about the shims. They give you some shims in here because I know it's critical on these things from what I've read already, the end play. So they give you some shims for end play. They give you some screws and electrical terminals. And then, of course, the business side of things, they give you the magnetic pickup. So this is the electronic sending unit. And we're going to use this to replace our points to trigger that MSD box. It's a street fire ignition that's underneath the dash there. So that's what we're going to put in. Let's see. So on the distributor, I need to get my screwdriver, pull off the cap, unscrew the points, and get started in this. But I'm going to, before I get too far, I'm definitely going to read the instructions and make sure I don't do something incorrectly. So let me get smart about that. And then I'll come back to you. All right, so as I was getting started with this, I discovered that I had the two screws that were on the top. I stripped one of them with the Phillips top, and I ended up having to break the rotor to get it off, but that's fine. I got a brand new cap and rotor to go back anyway. So that's the first thing, is you take off the rotor, and I still have mine marked, so I'll be able to transfer that mark to the new rotor. And then you need to pull the points out, which there's two screws here, and they say to save them because you're going to be using those to hold down the magnetic pickup. And it took a little while. The instructions are not super clear. After you tinker with them a little bit, you figure out what's going on. But what they want you to do is they want you to take this magnetic pickup and they want you to slip it over your mechanical advance, and then stick it in through the two holes that are that hold down the rotor. So when you put this back together, there's a couple of nuts that are going to hold the rotor down. So there's one other thing here that I need to get smart about. Here it says that this top, or this magnetic ring, needs to be lined up. There's a dimple. So there must be a different indexing between how these magnetic pickups are. So there's a dimple that it says to pay attention to, and it is right here, right next to one of the screws. So it says that dimple needs to be lined up. A notch is cut into the ring. Line this stud up with the square cut out in the advanced weight mechanism for the correct firing pattern. So when you put your cap on, it's got a little dimple, and there's the little square part. So it wants this little indent. It wants this little notch right there that's right next to one of the screws. It wants that little notch. I hope it's focusing on that. It wants that to be in the same position as the square cutout for the rotor cap. So let's slip that on, make sure I've got it right. Slip it over. I can get it over here. There we go. Slip that in. And now that is in. So then it says to go ahead and put the pickup on. So now I have a CD ignition, so I'm going to have to do something particular with the wiring. But right now, let me go ahead and get that on. Okay, so once you get the ring in, I found it helpful to put a little nut to hold it because the magnet keeps wanting to drop it down in the spot. But it wants you to put this exactly where the points went, and there's a little dimple. There's a little locating dimple right there. There's a little pin, and there is a corresponding hole on the igniter that goes over that. So I'm going to put that on, and then the other thing that they give you a grommet. So you have to pop out the original factory grommet from the distributor where the coil wire went, and or the points wire went, and they give you this little grommet to go back in place. So I'm going to slip this in, screw this down, and slip the wires into that little hole. Got that in. I think it'd be easier to put the wires in first. Slip those in through the hole. I can see them through the grommet. There we go. Flat all slack. Make sure I got the dimple ready to line up. All right, that's down. Now it says we're going to reuse the points screws to tighten this down. Put that in. All right, I got the one screw in. Now the second one. Get it in. And tighten those two down. Now, just for giggles and grins, we're going to check all the end play that it tells you to do. So I'm going to do that and just make sure. So what it wants is it wants a certain clearance between this magnetic plate and the pickup. All right, so these two are tight, I think. Yeah. Let's see what it says about clearance. So the air gap is set at approximately 10 thousandths on the low end and 60 thousandths on the high end. Let me get my feeler gauges and make sure that we got no more than 60 thousandths. I believe I'm going to have to stack in order to find 60 thousandths. Go 60 thousandths, so 19, 20, and 21. That's a pretty good stack. So that's right there. You can see it. I'm just going to check and make sure. Yeah, I'm jammed all the way up, and that is like right at 60 thousandths. So I ought to be good on the high end. Ought to be good. So that's as tight as we can make it. Yeah, so all right. Let me go ahead and finish assembling this, and then we'll come back and go put it in the car. Okay, now that it's assembled, let me show you what it looks like. So that's about what that air gap looks like, 60 thousandths, and it's not square. You know, that's the way it was originally. You see how it's kind of tilted up on an angle? So that's the way it was built. This is my original mark. I know it's sloppy, but then I transferred my other mark to the rotor. So now that's all ready to go. It's got a red and black wire. The black is the trigger that goes to the white wire of your CD box, and then the red wire goes to an ignition wire. So I happen to have a red ignition wire that was run just in case next to my distributor, so that's what I'm going to hook that up to. I do not have terminal ends for this, so what I'm going to end up doing is I'm probably going to just temporarily connect this, tape over it, and then when I get to my terminals, I'll put some nice disconnectable terminals on it. So let me go ahead and put it in the car. I got the distributor dropped in. I used my little trick by having the rotor spun this way to where it was when I pulled it out, and that way it corkscrewed right back down in the position, and you can see my two marks are now lined up again. The distributor rotor and the housing are back in the same orientation, so that'll put the cap and the rotor in the right orientation for timing. So now I've got a red wire that has to hook up to my ignition wire, 12-volt ignition right there, only on when the key is on. And then the black wire from the trigger will now replace where I had my points wire hooked up before which was to this white wire that goes to my CD box. Let me get all that hooked up, put the cap back on, put the plug wires back on, and try to fire it up. All right, how brave am I feeling? I haven't even tested it. I haven't put the keys in it yet, so you're gonna see if it starts up just like I'm gonna see. Success! Yes! Yes! She's back. She is back, she's back, she's back. So before, what would happen is, when it did start, it would run, and then it would start dieseling and clattering, and I mean, the dieseling was just driving me nuts. And it would just clatter and spit and sputter, and the exhaust pipe was just black soot, carbon, and now it's back. It is back, back, back. Let's see how quickly it starts. Used to also run on after too. I think it's back, it's good. Let's wrap this up. All right, so there you have it. The Ignitor by Pertronix, electronic ignition, points replacement, street fire, MSD street fire box, capacitive discharge ignition. So look, if you stuck with me this far, let me tell you a quick story. So I've got these points in my hand. My channel is Restoring Christine. I'm rebuilding a 1956 Chevy Bel Air, and I'm well along the way in that project, but restoring cars is something that I learned from my dad. My dad and I used to do this together when I was a younger man, and my dad passed away over 25 years ago now. He's been going a while. So my dad went for Christmas, one Christmas 1974 I believe it was, I got me a Honda MR50, and that Honda MR50 was only this big. But I loved it, and I was a young boy riding it. But the Honda MR50, guess what it had? Points ignition. So my dad, I was only 7, 8 years old, and my dad taught me how to pull out an emery board, remove the flywheel cover, and use an emery board to file the points when my bike would stop running. So I'd be stuck on the trail, kicking, kicking, kicking. It wouldn't start. Okay, leave it in a kickstand. Pull off the flywheel cover, get the emery board, sand these little points, and it would fire right back up. Well, I'll tell you what, I wish they'd have had this for that little MR50. But anyway, so look, if you're interested, if you like this video, go check out my other videos. Go check out my restoration project. It's a really good, I think we've got a good array of videos out there to look at. We're getting to the point where we're getting ready to paint the car soon, so if you're interested in watching me work on that, please go check it out. It's Restoring Christine. It's a 1956 Chevy Bel Air car that I've had for a long time. So that's going to do it for this little episode. I hope this helps somebody. If you find it useful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're enjoying the channel, I'd appreciate a subscription. So until next time, take care of yourself. Cheers.